Chris Shandeck, CYInterview, covering Las Vegas and the world. If you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting that subscribe button below and like this video to keep up with everything we have going on here at CYInterview in Las Vegas. We greatly appreciate your support. It means a lot. So we want to wish Justin Bieber and his wife Hailey Bieber congratulations, as Hailey gave birth to a son a couple of weeks ago. As you probably know, those of you who are big Justin Bieber fans, Justin Bieber's mother is a woman by the name of Pattie Mallette. She gave birth to Justin when she was 18 years old and had a very challenging teenage years upbringing. And she wrote about it in a book called Nowhere But Up, the story of Justin Bieber's mother. And we had a chance to spend some time. We did a very long CY interview with Pattie back in 2013 when we were in South Florida. And we're going to bring you that CY interview at the end of this one. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is that, it's such an interesting culture that we have today, right? Starting, almost 20 years ago, reality television really gave the parents and the siblings and the partners, the famous people, their own platforms. Some of them got their own 15 minutes of fame. Maybe some of them got book deals like Pattie Mallette. Maybe some of them got endorsement deals even from brands and companies, because that's where we are right now. If you're tied to somebody who's famous, you're dating them, you're a sibling of them, you're the parent of them, you got your own chance to get your own 15 minutes of fame and your own show business career for a moment at least. And so Pattie wrote her book, she told me back in 2013, because she wanted to give people hope that, no matter what you've been through in your life, that you can overcome it. No matter the traumas and the challenges, you can deal with what you're dealing with and move forward. And we had a really interesting conversation about that and other topics. And, I think anybody who has been through, obstacles in their own life and wants to then try to share where they are now and the trajectory they've been on and what they've learned and their hope for you if you've been on a similar path, I think that's always good when people are able to share their experiences with each other and try to inspire others. Because I think that's like one of the most important things in life, right? I mean, we spend so much time, so many people focusing on the negative moments on life. Why don't we focus on ways to come up with solutions and find ways of, positive forwardness, positive forwardness. Let's move forward in life. Let's focus. Listen, we can reflect on the challenging times that some of us had in our childhoods, or we can focus on our adulthood moments right now and think about how can we be responsible for the life we have today and be a better person to the other people who are around us, whether they're our partners or our parents or our family or our best friends or our work colleagues or whatever it might be. But that's, I think, what you can learn from this. And so Pattie Mallette's goal, Justin Bieber's mother, was to just uplift people through the book that she wrote. So I had a chance to sit down with her for an in-depth interview when she was in South Florida on her book tour. And we talked about the book and a lot of other topics, including Justin Bieber, of course, and death. And we're not going to bring you that CY interview. I thought Pattie was very nice, willing to answer any question I had, and I never felt rushed when we were sitting down. She accommodated me and answered every question I wanted to. And she's a very nice person who obviously, raised a very famous son who's known across the world, and no one can prepare you for that. And I think, the reality of what it comes down to at the end of the day is that, parents, many of them do the best they can. Some don't. Some are great. You never get to choose, as I like to say. There are a couple of things in life. We don't get to choose where we're born, and we don't get to choose who our parents are. And that's one of the things that, children have to learn with growing up, you know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, if we become parents, in our own lives, hopefully we want to set examples for those children that we have and try to be a positive reinforcement that the world is not just this, dark and negative place all the time. So there are many great things about the world, and there are many beautiful experiences to be had, I believe, through traveling, for example, you get to go and see some of the most amazing things that maybe you've seen it on, the National Geographic channel, or you've seen it on YouTube, but why not go see it in person and, I was so grateful, last year when I had a chance to go on a safari to Kenya. I went back to Kenya in May this year and got to see the giraffes literally up close, standing right above me. I mean, a couple feet away. I mean, there's just nothing better than that, in my opinion. Get out there, find something positive, plan your life and move forward and come up with something that you really enjoy. So now we bring you my CY interview with Justin Bieber's mother, Pattie Mallette, from 2013. I'm Chris Yannick for CY interview. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with everything we have going on here at CY interview. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.
You're on CY Interview.
This is Chris Yannick. She is the mother of one of the most famous music stars in the world. Her story she tells of overcoming many tough challenges would be inspiring to anyone. We now bring you our exclusive CY interview sit-down with New York Times bestselling author and Justin Bieber's mother, Pattie Mallette. Her best-selling book, Nowhere But Up, the story of Justin Bieber's mom, is now out in the teen edition.
Pattie, thank you so much for joining me today. What do you like about Miami before we get into anything?
Ooh, I like the weather. I do. I like the warm weather.
Well, that's fantastic. Obviously there is a stereotype about parents of celebrity kids, but you obviously are trying to use your motherhood, being attached to a famous pop star, to do something really serious. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I just love the idea that Justin has such an amazing platform with so many teenagers, especially, for me to be able to even utilize it for good. And, having over 2 million Twitter followers that call me mom, I'm just excited to be able to be a voice in their ear.
Everything that you've been through, whether it was, of course, being bullying, not being able to communicate with your mother, not feeling like you had the love from the parents you wanted, obviously, the sexual abuse and everything else that you went through. The question I have more than anything else for that is, and to anyone who's been through any of those things, is how do you keep it going? How do you keep life going? How do you stay and realize that there's still something to get up for every day, even with everything you went through?
It's a process. It's a long process, and I've had to really fight for my healing, and that's something that I really want to encourage other people to do is not give up. And some days it looks really hopeless, but I think that if you just don't give up and really reach out for other people, that's what I had to do.
You have shared stories, of course, in the book. Your biological father wasn't in your life very much, and then you shared a story about your brother. You wanted to get close to your stepfather, but he told you, that's not really your father. But, looking at this entire scenario of everything you went through, do you think that if parents were supportive, were loving, were caring, communicated, were involved in their children's lives, that it can prevent a lot of the issues perhaps you went through?
I think love just accomplishes so much, and it comes in so many different shapes and sizes. I know for me, being abandoned and that deep sense of rejection really it led me to do a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have otherwise.
Well, you share some stories, of course, in the book about, the unfortunate sexual abuse, and you talk about how you watched a public service announcement on TV and you realized about no means no, and then those things stopped. For any child who's growing up that has had to deal with that, what do you say, and why do you think it's so hard for a child to know, even though it's inappropriate dealing with that scenario, why do you think it's hard for them to realize not to say no? Why do you think it's hard for them to move away from that and tell somebody?
Unfortunately, so much abuse happens in the home or from family members or people that they're really close to, and I think that the kids are not. A lot of kids are just not told how to respond if something were to happen, and I think it's really important for parents to have an open dialogue with their kids and talk to them about these difficult issues.
Another thing you talk about is emotional disconnect. So the question is that how can parents tell if their child is emotionally disconnected, and why do you think children end up becoming emotionally disconnected?
I think there's a difference between sadness and depression. I think sometimes we get sad. We have bad days, we have good days. But I think that if your child is distant and spends a lot of time with themselves, and the sadness is prolonged, I think it's just really important to pay attention to those things and even get a professional involved.
Sounds great. Everything that you've been through in your life, obviously teens have troubles growing up. You've had a combination of things, unfortunately, and no one should have to go through those kinds of things. But what advice would you give to any teenager who's been through any of the things that you've been through, or, feels down, whether it be depression, whether it feels like no support from their parents, they don't have their parents in their lives, any of those kinds of things, they want to turn to drugs, they hang with the wrong people. What is your advice to anyone going through any of those kinds of challenges? Any teenager who might be listening to this, obviously, because your son, appeals to many great teenagers out there?
Well, I think what I would say to my teenage self is love yourself. And sometimes when you're not getting the love that you need from your parents, sometimes that you have to care enough about yourself and reach out for help. Whether that's a friend's parent, whether that's a teacher at school, whether that's a counselor, and don't stop reaching out, because there are a lot of resources and a lot of people that would love to help if they knew that you were in the predicament that you were in.
In the book, one of the quotes was, "The right thing to do is usually the hardest thing to do." Looking at that, I wonder, the thing that I think that happens for most teenagers growing up is the cool thing is usually the wrong thing, and that's really the big challenge in general. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that, and, why making the right choices are usually the toughest choices. They're not the coolest choices, but in the long term, your life will shape out much better.
Yeah. I don't know how else to say it, but that the right thing to do is often the hardest thing to do. And in the moment, it might seem like it's too hard to do, but in the end, you will appreciate that you went through with that you made the right choice.
So let's move forward now. You talk obviously about your pregnancy in very big detail with Justin in the book. Was that really the moment where life changed for you, where you said to yourself, I've got responsibility now, I need to make better choices for myself, I would love to do this, but I can't do this anymore because I've got a son to look out for? Was that like your wake-up call moment?
Getting pregnant was definitely one of the defining moments. For me, I knew that I was responsible for more than just myself, so I really did kick it into high gear. Another defining moment for me was when I was in the hospital for trying to commit suicide, and I had that, encounter.
Looking forward, you talk about, your son grows up, he's the joy of your life, he becomes successful, and, you realize even with all these great moments, you move from Canada down to Georgia, you still talk about struggling with PTSD. The question I ask for you is, how are you doing today?
Today, I'm doing great. I have not arrived. I don't think any of us ever do, but I am whole today. I say that I'm healthy, and I'm not on daily medication anymore for depression, anxiety, and there was a season that I had to be on that.
When you look at that, I wonder, and I say to you, I think you're an inspiration given what you went through, because so many other people could have gone the wrong way. So many other people could have raised, a son that wasn't responsible, or a mother that didn't keep tabs on him and tell him to pay attention and listen, and a mother who looked out for his interests before throwing him into show business as well, because she was thinking about his interests and not her interests. But, do you feel at this point in time, with this platform you have now, with this book in the teen edition, that, being an inspiration and having a chance to really share your story, it's like I can really use my fame and notoriety of my sons for a good reason to help other teens, because it's not all peaches and cream for everybody like my son.
Yes, absolutely. That's the only reason that I wrote this book. That's the whole reason that I'm doing all this, is because I feel like I had a second chance and I was able to come through, and it's been really difficult, but I just want to encourage other people that no matter what you've been through, that there's hope.
You were very hesitant about your son getting in show business. You were hounded with messages on YouTube and calls and emails, and you waited and you waited and you waited and you waited. Was the reason you were hesitant because of your upbringing as a teenager and what you went through? Was that part of it or not really?
No, I think my hesitancy was, all of the tragedy and all of the horror stories that you hear from the industry. And I really wanted to make sure that he was surrounded by good people.
Looking back on that, do you have any regrets? Would you have done anything differently?
No, he has an amazing team around him. The management team that is around him have become family, and they are incredible, and they really care about who he is, not just the pop star.
For all the fans out there, and you know there are millions of fans, and I know that you probably read tweets every day, you probably get messages every day, and you are probably consumed with it everywhere you go. For the fans that are out there that are concerned about your son's safety and well-being, what do you have to say to them?
To the fans that are concerned
about your son's just well-being in general from the outside because of looking in.
I just say that I know that sometimes Justin has to do things his own way, but regardless the path that he has to get there, I know that he's going to come out on top. I believe in him, and I know that he's going to be great.
Given all the things that have gone on with him, and he's under tremendous scrutiny, obviously, and teenagers have to grow up and do their own experiences, but he hasn't done anything wrong at this point in time. But obviously, he's going to be under a magnifying glass times a million, so when something gets blown up, you probably just say, well, that's to be expected.
I don't necessarily try and make excuses for him. I just deal with him on a mother-to-son basis. I have conversations with him because he's my son. I don't look at him as a public figure. I just deal with whatever situations arise and have private conversations.
Well, I think based on the experiences that you went through and your life experience and goes, I think that you would probably give him the hard advice he would need if he was ever in a bad situation.
Yeah, he knows my story. He's very familiar with what I've been through, and hopefully he can learn from some of my mistakes.
Well, I think that's fantastic. So, to wrap up, a few more for fun. First off, I really didn't get to ask at the beginning, though. You really did kind of discuss this in the interview. So when he got to the point that he got to, was that the moment when you decided that you were going to tell this story? When was the moment when you decided you were going to share all these really in-depth, deep details?
Well, I've been sharing my story in public settings since before he started his career. But when he turned 18 and wanted to, have a little bit of space from mom, have me come on the road but not full-time, was the time when I thought this is a good time for me to put this down on paper and get it out in a book form.
Random question, this is the fun time. Will Pattie Mallette ever do Dancing with the Stars?
Oh my gosh. I've never even thought about it.
Well, I think she's got an inspiring story, and that show's all about inspiring growth, and I think that she could put her message from the book and what she's been through into another platform. Thoughts?
Well, another platform that I've thought about doing was a movie. So those are, thoughts that we're kicking around, but there's nothing set in stone at this point.
Fair enough. So why don't you, in closing, tell me what Round 2 is?
Round 2 is my new foundation, and we're just in the beginning stages. Our goal is, the idea is something like this. When you get knocked down in round 1 of life, then there's round 2. And so there's so many things that can discourage you and trip you up and make you feel like you can't go on, such as addictions or self-harm, bullying, people that need counseling. So one of our first initiatives is something, our first campaign is called Speak Up, Listen Up. And we're encouraging people to share their stories with other people and also to listen to someone else's story, because so many people, especially teenagers, want to keep everything inside. And so it's really important we encourage talking about it. And so we want to be able to fund counseling for people that can't afford it.
And a final fun question that I forgot. Have you had a chance to talk with your son about his talk with Bill Clinton at all? Not yet, maybe?
No, I have not talked to him about that yet.
Well, I think it was, in closing, I think it was a very mature choice for him to call. I think it was a big deal blown out of proportion, but thoughts? Isn't it cool that at least he got to talk to Bill Clinton?
I have so many thoughts on that, but because I haven't talked to him about it yet, I have nothing to say about that at this point.
Well, fair enough. And one last thing I forgot. Any advice for pregnant teenage mothers? I forgot to ask you that.
Advice for teenage pregnant mothers. Just love yourself and don't give up and reach out for help.
And find the support that you need, right?
Absolutely. There's so many resources out there.
Pattie Mallette, thank you so much for joining me. This was a really great conversation. You're inspiring people, and I give you all the credit in the world for talking about such deep and dark things. So, a documentary film, perhaps, then?
Not in the works at this time, no.
But a non-fiction film, then, is what you're talking about?
Yeah. It's not in the works, but we're just kicking around the ideas.
Pattie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
For CYInterview, I'm Chris Yandek.